Have you ever felt like you're, wearing a mask? Like you're performing a version of yourself, maybe at work or with friends, even at home sometimes, just trying to fit in or maybe avoid conflict? What if actually taking off that mask, and I know that can feel terrifying in the moment, what if that's the most direct path to a richer, deeper sense of joy and connection in your life? That's exactly what we're diving into today. This is our deep dive into the whole world of authenticity, what it really means to live true to yourself, and this surprising, pretty profound link between being authentic and, well, experiencing deep well being. And we're exploring this through a really fascinating stack of perspectives you've shared with us. We're pulling insights from psychology, relationship experts, even dipping into a bit of philosophy to really get why authenticity matters so much.
Yeah, and our mission here is to really try and distill the most important nuggets from all this material. We want to help you cut through some of the noise, understand what authenticity actually looks like in practice, and crucially, why it feels so incredibly challenging sometimes. And then uncover some practical ways you can actually start cultivating it, for more joy and genuine connection in your own life.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We hear that phrase, just be yourself, thrown around constantly. It sounds so simple, almost like a cliche, right? But what does it really mean to be authentic? The sources you gave us really dig into this, and it's much more than just surface level stuff.
Absolutely. At its very core, authenticity is fundamentally about alignment. It's that state where your inner world, so your thoughts, your feelings, your core values, your true nature is actually in harmony with your outward actions. So what you say and what you do, they match who you are inside. It reminds me of that simple but really powerful idea attributed to Gandhi. Happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. That harmony is authenticity.
Harmony. I really like that image. So it's not just about being quirky or trying to stand out for the sake of it. It's about this internal consistency, being integrated.
Exactly. Yeah. Psychologists often talk about this difference between the true or authentic self and the false or adaptive self. And that adaptive self is that version we might create or, tweak to fit in, to meet expectations, or maybe just to feel safe from judgment.
Right. And one perspective in the sources even brings in philosophy, connecting this idea to existentialism. I know that might sound a bit heavy, but the simple takeaway is actually quite powerful. It's this idea that we aren't born with some fixed nature or a predetermined path laid out for us. We actually create who we are through the choices and the actions we make throughout our lives.
Exactly. So living authentically from this viewpoint isn't just about finding some hidden pre-existing self deep inside. It's more about actively confronting that incredible freedom and also the responsibility to define yourself through your choices, rather than just passively, defaulting to what they do or what society seems to demand. It's about moving away from what Heidegger called falling into the crowd towards ownness, being your own.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's about choosing your own path, essentially, and owning those choices. So if authenticity is this powerful state of alignment and self-creation, and it leads to harmony, why is it so incredibly hard for so many of us to live this way consistently? The sources definitely don't shy away from the challenges.
Oh no, they highlight some really significant barriers. And perhaps the biggest one, the most common one, is fear. Just plain fear. The fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, or maybe that really deep-seated fear that if people saw the real you, they wouldn't like you, or even worse, maybe they'd abandon you.
That resonates. We learn really early on, don't we, what behaviors get us acceptance or disapproval. One source talks about how in insecure relationships, maybe romantic or otherwise, we tend to hide our vulnerabilities precisely because we're afraid our partner won't really see us or will judge us or leave us if they do. It taps right into that fundamental human need for belonging, and sometimes, we trade authenticity for what feels like safety or acceptance.
Absolutely. And it's not just about past wounds or trauma, though that's definitely part of it for some. Social pressures are just relentless. Expectations from family, from culture, even those seemingly perfect lives we see curated on social media. They can constantly pressure us to activate that adaptive self, pushing us towards aspirations or maybe appearances that aren't truly our own.
Like that anecdote you mentioned about someone changing their hair color, and even if they liked it, the pressure from others wanting them to be how they used to be, it took real courage to stand against that. It takes guts to stick with your own choices when others push back.
It absolutely does. And it's so important to remember, often someone else's negative reaction says more about their own expectations or their own discomfort than it does about you or your choice. That constant pressure to just go along to get along, it takes a huge amount of internal energy.
It sounds, frankly, exhausting. constantly policing yourself, managing that false self, trying to keep up appearances all the time.
It can be utterly draining. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which leads us perfectly to the critical piece that the sources identify as the bridge, really, to getting back to authenticity.
Okay, so if fear and social pressure are these big walls in the way, what's the path through? Or maybe over? The sources repeatedly point towards vulnerability.
Yes, authenticity absolutely demands vulnerability. It's that willingness to take the risk, to open up and share personal information, feelings, thoughts, to allow yourself to be seen. And that includes the parts that feel imperfect or maybe even scary.
Like sharing your fears, right? You mentioned the example of Sarah telling her boss she felt nervous about a potential promotion.
Exactly. And instead of being seen as weak or incapable, Sarah's vulnerability actually led to her boss offering reassurance and support, which is often what happens. Or that really powerful example of the entry-level professional who chose to share his salary first, to try and encourage transparency and fairness around compensation among his colleagues. His willingness to be vulnerable wasn't just about him. It created space and inspired others to do the same. That's huge.
And here's where it gets really, really interesting for me. The sources kind of flip the script on vulnerability. It's not presented as a weakness at all. It's actually shown as a profound sign of strength and courage. One suggestion was even that sharing seemingly small perceived flaws, like mentioning a neck crease you're self-conscious about, can actually disarm fear and build connection with others who might feel the same way about something similar.
hmm When both people in any kind of relationship, whether it's romantic partners, friends, even colleagues at work, are willing to step into that vulnerable space, that's where the sources say the real magic of unity and peace occurs. It creates this deep sense of safety and belonging, and it often gives other people permission to lower their own guard, too. It's reciprocal.
Right. So we understand authenticity is alignment. It's challenged by fear. Vulnerability is key. But what's the payoff? Why go through all this hard, courageous work? The title promises happiness and deep joy.
And the sources absolutely deliver on that promise. They strongly link authenticity to significant benefits across pretty much every major area of life. Your psychological well-being, the depth and quality of your relationships, and even your physical health. When you genuinely live in alignment, you experience a greater sense of inner peace, and yes, a deeper capacity for joy, precisely because you're not fighting against yourself anymore. There's less internal conflict.
And the research really backs this up. One study we looked at specifically found that individuals who reported higher levels of authenticity consistently reported better physical and mental well-being. That included lower stress levels, less depression, and even fewer physical symptoms. It's not just a nice idea, it has measurable impacts on your health.
It also fundamentally transforms relationships. Openness and honesty aren't just, nice to haves. They are absolutely crucial building blocks for real intimacy and trust. Sharing your struggles, your fears, your true thoughts, even when it's hard, creates a powerful sense of closeness and mutual understanding. And this is huge because it directly combats feelings of loneliness, even if you're surrounded by people. That research on people with mental health challenges, it found that those who practiced vulnerability with a trusted friend felt significantly less alone and less ashamed afterwards.
And it sounds like this builds empathy too, right? If you can manage to be kind and compassionate towards yourself about your own imperfections, your own struggles, it becomes so much easier to understand and forgive others for theirs.
Exactly. Self-compassion and authenticity really go hand in hand. By accepting your whole self, including the bits you might see as weaknesses, you build genuine self-confidence. You feel less pressure to keep up a facade, right?
Yeah.
And that internal freedom then allows you to take more authentic risks towards your goals and your dreams.
Yeah.
You're not held back as much by what will people think.
And this isn't just about personal life, is it? It even shows up in leadership roles. The sources mention that authentic leaders, people who truly walk the talk, who are transparent, build immense trust with their teams. They create safer psychological environments where people feel okay speaking up, which improves collaboration and ultimately can enhance performance. Just modeling authenticity seems to inspire others.
Absolutely. And beyond that, authenticity is linked to finding more meaning in life, overall life satisfaction, increased engagement in work you actually care about, greater creativity, and it even influences positive first impressions. When you're authentic, you just feel more intrinsically motivated to do things that genuinely resonate with your true self, rather than just going through the motions.
Okay, this all sounds incredibly compelling. I'm sold. But how do we actually start doing this? It feels less like a checklist you can tick off and more like an ongoing practice, maybe even a lifelong journey.
It absolutely is a continuous process. It's not a destination you arrive at. but your sources offer some really practical steps and approaches you can start taking wherever you are right now.
And the first one seems absolutely fundamental. Know yourself.
Crucial, yeah. This means actively dedicating time to identify your core values. What really matters to you? What are your beliefs? What are your unique strengths? And yes, also your weaknesses. Understanding your emotional landscape, what motivates you. Spend time reflecting. The sources suggest practical exercises like writing a letter to your future self, or explicitly listing and prioritizing your values. Maybe keeping an emotions diary just to clarify your inner world. Understanding your past, your family influences, your triggers. That also helps illuminate why you might react the way you do in certain situations. And importantly, spend time alone. Truly alone, without devices, without distractions, just to quiet the external noise and try to reconnect with that quiet inner voice.
Right, tuning out the static. Okay, so once you have a clear picture internally, the next step seems to be living in alignment.
Exactly. This is about consciously making sure your actions and decisions are consistent with those core values and beliefs you've identified. Setting healthy boundaries is absolutely vital here. That means learning to say no when you need to, clearly communicating your needs and desires, which can be hard, and practicing assertiveness. And assertiveness isn't aggression. It's about standing up for yourself and expressing your needs respectfully without being aggressive or, passive and resentful. It's also about practicing telling the truth, even in small interactions, rather than constantly trying to impress or minimize yourself just to fit some mold.
What about the emotional side of things? Authenticity seems so deeply connected to how we handle our feelings.
It is fundamental. You really have to learn to acknowledge your emotions without judgment. Just allow yourself to feel them fully, even the uncomfortable ones like sadness, anger, fear. Trying to avoid or repress emotions just disconnects you from your authentic self and can actually cause more distress down the line. One study found that denying feelings actually made people feel worse and even impaired their memory. Wow. So learn to identify what you're feeling, find healthy ways to express it, and manage those emotions constructively. It's a skill.
And self-compassion ties right into that, doesn't it? Being kind to yourself through that process.
Deeply, yes. Self-compassion is essentially about treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and respect you would offer a dear friend who is struggling. It's that simple, but not always easy. Accepting your imperfections, your mistakes, your difficulties with compassion, rather than harsh self-criticism, is just essential. It builds healthy self-esteem, makes you more resilient, helps you navigate adversity. Writing a self-compassion letter, as suggested in one source, can be a surprisingly powerful exercise. Accepting your flaws doesn't make you weak, it makes you human, it makes you relatable, and ultimately stronger.
And we've talked about it, but it really bears repeating. Authenticity is absolutely key for building real, meaningful connections.
It's the foundation. You can't have deep connection without it. Practice having authentic conversations. That means genuinely listening, not just waiting to talk. Being willing to share your own vulnerability appropriately, building trust through consistent honesty. And don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. Paradoxically, showing that you need support can actually strengthen bonds by showing you trust others and are willing to be seen as, well, human. And maybe look for role models. Find authentic people you admire, observe how they navigate life. It can be incredibly inspiring for your own journey to see it in action.
So it's this mix of self-awareness, aligning your actions with your values, emotional honesty, building real connections, and it sounds like underlying all of it.
Yeah.
It requires courage.
Absolutely. Authenticity is inherently an act of courage. It takes courage to look inward honestly, courage to choose your own path even when it feels different or unpopular, courage to stay true to your core purpose when distractions pull you away, and courage not to let fear be the primary driver of your decisions. But remember, action is often the most powerful antidote to fear. Taking small steps despite the fear, that's where the change happens.
Yeah, it's not about suddenly becoming this perfectly adjusted, fully self-realized person overnight. It sounds more like being willing to be real, moment by moment, choice by choice.
Exactly, and it truly is a lifelong process of evolution and discovery. Appreciate and nurture the authentic you that emerges along the way. It's not some fixed state you achieve and then you're done. We're always evolving.
We focus mostly on personal life and our close relationships. Did the sources touch much on authenticity in wider spheres, like work or society?
Briefly, yes, and it's quite fascinating. We saw how it impacts leadership and the workplace. This idea of creating an authentic psychological climate where people feel safe enough to bring more of their true selves to work. And that can boost job satisfaction, creativity, and reduce burnout. It even plays a role in, believe it or not, consumer behavior. The perceived authenticity of a brand strongly influences trust and whether people buy from them. So, authenticity sells, literally. And yes, it's certainly relevant in politics, with voters often judging leaders, rightly or wrongly, based on how authentic they are perceived to be.
Huh. So it really does ripple outwards beyond our personal bubble. Though the sources were balanced, they also mentioned it's not always simple. Authentic expression can potentially cause conflict if it's not navigated skillfully or if it clashes really strongly with the environment you're in.
Exactly. A balanced view acknowledges that complexity. It's a journey that requires not just courage, but also, wisdom and skill in how you express your truth while navigating the relationships in the world around you. It's not about bluntness for its own sake.
Hmm. This whole deep dive into your sources really underscores that the path to deep joy and fulfillment isn't really about seeking external validation or trying to force yourself into someone else's idea of who you should be. It's this ongoing, sometimes messy, but ultimately courageous journey of truly knowing yourself, living in alignment with your core values even when it's challenging, embracing vulnerability, and building relationships where you can genuinely be seen for who you actually are.
That's it. The happiness of authenticity really comes from that fundamental internal harmony when what you think, say, and do are all aligned. It's a state that profoundly impacts your well-being, builds deeper, more resilient connections, and ultimately creates a more meaningful life. It definitely takes conscious practice, real effort, and yes, that word again, courage. But as the sources make incredibly clear, the results, the depth of living it brings are profoundly worthwhile. So as you reflect on all this, maybe consider just one small area in your life, perhaps today or sometime this week, where you might be instinctively holding back or playing a role, even just a little bit. What tiny, maybe even slightly scary, courageous step could you take in that specific situation to express a more authentic part of yourself? Just ask yourself, how might that one small act open the door, maybe just a crack, to a little more freedom and a deeper sense of joy?